Hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo with Beau. Hope you guys are doing good. My name's Beau Willette. We're going to be in Genesis 39 today. Another really cool chapter. You know, the narratives in the book of Genesis are just fascinating, man. They're absolutely cool. I wish I would have kind of read them a lot earlier than I did, but I'm stoked that I did it by my late teenage years. I finally picked up a Bible and started reading. But I love them. I can relate to them. I think probably most people should be able to relate to the different characters that we find in the book of Genesis. And it should, give us a lot of hope too, on this planet where there's not much hope. There is a flicker of light here and there, but the flicker soon kind of goes away, right? And then we're back to this, oh man, here we go again. And just a lot of destruction in our world. A lot of chaos amongst us human beings and how we tend to go about it. Even in our current government in our country here in the United States, you see a lot of kind of up and down, what's going on, who's doing what's doing who. It feels at times like the Three Stooges, doing their thing. And it's kind of like, whoop, it's kind of, real kind of classic slapstick. And, we're not sure what's going on. And do we ever really know what's going on? Genesis 39. Now we pick up where we left off with Joseph. Remember, he was, not seen as a really good guy in the eyes of his brothers, so he was sold as a slave. And he ended up into the house of the government of Egypt, one of the politicians. And so it says, when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar. So it's interesting. His cousins take him. So you got to remember, these are like relatives. They take them. And could you imagine your cousins, man? Like, I just met a cousin up in Phoenix, but could you imagine my cousin being like, hey, I'm going to sell Beau to somewhere, put me on a ship, and there we go. It's unbelievable when you think about that. But then you think of how many times in our families, is there a lot of conflict? Sometimes it's in our home, but sometimes it's like been going on in our family lines for a long period of time. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's not about you, but you certainly have been affected by decisions people make. And so there's always these splits within families. So the Ishmaelite traders sell Joseph to Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh. Oh, my Bible just went weird. Okay. Was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So politicians tend to sometimes have more, what we could say, maybe leeway than the average person who's just living, in a neighborhood by an elementary school or something like that. It's like they have more money. And it's kind of sad to think that you can be a politician, serving the people, and yet the houses they live in. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's right? Do you think it's right for politicians, or even pastors that are to serve people? Do you think it's okay that they live in very expensive places? What's your thoughts on that? I'm a guy who, man, I tend to go, I don't think that's right. I think something's wrong, but tell me what you think about that. I mean, is it okay, for a pastor of a flock to have, something that's, really above and beyond. I mean, you could really tell it's above and beyond. It's definitely outside of the person that you're ministering to. It's, or it's just really high and lofty. But I don't even think like a person who's a pastor in a rich congregation, say they're in, Studio City or something like that. I just don't think, it's probably the best thing or the right thing to be setting up shop in a $10 trillion home or something, just something that's really, now I understand prices are high. If a pastor lives in a, $1.5 million home, in California, that's probably a normal home. It's probably an average house, so you can't quite just go off the numbers all the time. But politicians, man, sometimes they get me, and I have to deal with that in my heart, because I'm like, oh, gosh, Potiphar, man, he's living high on the hog, And so the Lord was with Joseph. Isn't that cool? The Lord was with Joseph. Boy, do I want the Lord with me today. Father, forgive me my sins. Cleanse my heart, Lord. Help me. Give me a heart to praise you today. Give me a heart to repent today. Give me a heart, Father, to bring my heart, my cares before you and cast my cares upon you, for you care for me. Draw me close to you. Never let me go, right? I lay it all down again to hear you say that, that you're my friend. And I love that worship song. But notice it says the Lord was with Joseph. Isn't that cool? Giving him success in everything he did. It seemed like everything Joseph touched seemed to do well. It obviously created a jealousy with his brothers. I mean, the issue of favoritism in his family was strong. His dad very much favored Joseph over the other brothers, due to Joseph's mom was Jacob's favorite. And so you have this issue, but, he did prosper, meaning he did put his hand to the plow, and what he did well. And so that was cool. And it says God gave him success in everything that he did. I love that. It's a grace of God to be successful, to do well. Successful means not so much wealth. It can mean that, but it can also mean just success in the sense of doing good with what you do, being successful, being able to accomplish something, being able to, when you're a successful guitar player, you learn a song and then you're able to play it. That's success, right? You're able to play it now. So things like that. And it's like, what are you successful at? What have you been able to do? You learned it and then you're able to do it. My mom became a computer programmer, and so she never went to college for it. She actually learned under was tutored. And back in the day, you could do that. You could work underneath someone like an apprentice, and they taught you a skill. And she learned computer programming, and so, she became a great programmer. Paula says that she agrees with me on that issue of, kind of the where you live type of thing for the politician, And so I'm curious though, how many of you guys are a little bummed when you go by, the residence of a person who's a politician, and man, it's huge. It is gigantic. It is obviously a very wealthy family. I mean, doesn't it just get you a little bit like, man, why do people get into politics? Is it really to serve the people? Or is it to really live where you want to live? To live like you want to live? Is that it? You want to live on that, that estate, whatever it is you want to, boy, then you really, that would be great, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely struggle with that. So it says that he put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. Now, this is cool. This is a really cool idea. You don't hear this taught too much, actually, when people go through these passages. Sometimes in this Devo, I get a chance to kind of comb through it a little bit. I'm not so concerned about time, per se. But what I find fascinating about this is another person is blessed, Potiphar, at the success of Joseph. And this is something I have to think about. Is my success really someone else's faithfulness? You know, sometimes people think that their success, like where they're at in life, is because of them. It's like, oh, it's all me. Instead of realizing that other people's faithfulness has contributed to me being successful. And this I find even more fascinating, that Potiphar does not know, or not given any idea that he knows the true and living God. But here, God, through Joseph, prospers Potiphar. How many people in leadership prosper not because of really, their relationship with God, but it's because of other people's relationship with God that they're blessed? Man, that is a real interesting kind of thought, to kind of extrapolate in your mind. And it's one that kind of should humble you as a human being, as just as a human on the planet. We should be a little humble and just going like, wow, yeah, I might be successful at my job, but how much of my success is me, and how much of my success is someone else's faithfulness, someone else's good work? Do I really do it all alone? Or is your success really at the hands of someone else? And it sounds like Potiphar's success really was at the hands of Joseph. Right? He blessed Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. It's so cool, right? So you might think, even when you think of ministry, you might think you're the best pastor ever. You might think you're awesome. You might think, wow, I'm just a great teacher. And really, the Lord's blessing you because he's blessing your servant. The one who's the deacon, who's doing all the work. That's why he's blessing you. It's not so much because of you. I just go, man, that's so cool. Why? Because it humbles you. It makes you go, gosh, man, it's so true, man, that, to come to the Bible and to read it and to think about it, if there's anything it does, it definitely humbles you. It makes you go, wow, I'm not all that. I am not all that. I might think I'm all that, but nope. God's blessing me because of that old lady who's serving. He loves that old lady, man. He loves how she's serving. She's serving from the right heart, the right motivation, and the pastor's being blessed. But it's certainly not the pastor, because he's lazy. That kind of idea. Oh, man, that's classic. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops, livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. All of a sudden, Joseph becomes an administrator. Man, I could certainly relate to Joseph. I've been an administrator for a long, long period of time. And how did I ever get to be an administrator? I mean, how does that even happen to a guy who can't pass math? A math class. Sometimes it's unbelievable, when you look at it and you just go, it's a miracle that you do what you do. And you go, gosh, Joseph probably goes, man, I wasn't raised in this political climate. And I certainly wasn't trained like in a university in, poli-sci, department. And so I'm kind of not sure what I'm doing, but the Lord's with him. and he puts in effort, and he puts in thought, and he got intuition, and he's got all those things that are needed, those caveats, man, of being a good worker. And it's definitely paying off. And Joseph was also a very handsome dude. He was a well-built young man. So this dude looked cool. He looked awesome. Looked fit. And he had a great business ethic. He got into politics, not because he so much wanted to do it, but he finds himself in that situation. But we see that there's going to be a situation that comes up. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded. Notice her eyes kind of tend to wander. And she looks at Joseph and she goes, "Man, that's a good looking dude." And nothing's wrong with that part of it, right? Of looking at him. But what happens is she starts lusting. She gets greedy. Like, I don't just think that person's a good, attractive looking person, because people are attractive. We've already seen that there's people in the Bible that are called beautiful. They're beautiful people. And sometimes you'll walk down the road, or you'll be hanging out, or maybe you're even at the beach, and you see someone and you go, "Wow, that person's really attractive." But it's what you do next, right? It's where your eyes go next. Where are they going to roll? Where are they going to go? How are you going to take that attraction, and where's it going to hit? Can you bring it to God and say, "Hey, God, you know what? That person is attractive. God, you're an amazing composer. You're an amazing painter. Lord, you make, man, just amazing creatures. Wow." And you just direct your thoughts to the Lord. Or, do you start, wandering? Man, Jesus had a lot to say about that, right? Didn't he? Our wandering eyes. So she starts looking at him, but she looks at him in a particular way. And I know this way because I grew up this way. I grew up very young, very, very young, in situations I should never have been in. But I had a crazy mom and dad at the time. And so we were put in some very interesting situations as well as kids that we just, probably today it probably would have been a CPS situation. But back then, Generation X kid, everything was a go. And, you kind of have to work through it. But by the time I was in junior high, already that wandering eye kind of, was very, very keen. I knew how to look at people. And by the time high school comes around, you're very much in that zone of knowing, what look means what. And she definitely knew this. And so Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has authority than I do, more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." Man, this is awesome. There's a reverence towards God here, and there's a reverence towards human beings as well. And I find that good. It's a loving God, loving your neighbor type of thing, right? Joseph says, "Hey, I'm going to love God. I want to honor God here. And also, I want to honor my master, the one who's on, my boss. I want to make sure I don't do anything, in the business that's going to dishonor my boss. And so I got to do things right. I got to cut things the right way. I got to make sure I'm not doing something wrong. I don't want to, offend him in any way." And those hearts are great. He definitely, knew John Maxwell's book, Business Ethics. I don't know if you ever read that one. It's an old book now, but it's a great one. It's a little book, just on, in the business of, your business, whatever business you're in, that you're doing things right. You're not cutting corners just because you're in business. You're doing the right kind of ethics in your job, in your company. How many companies do you think really have good business ethics? Man, that is another question, right? She kept pressuring on Joseph day after day. He refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of the way as much as possible. It kept her out of the way as much as possible. But she kept putting the pressure on. It's probably, big government, Egypt, but she knows where he's hanging out. She sees where he works out, what he's doing, the protein shakes he's eating, how he's staying fit, da 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 da. And she's watching, and she's going wherever he's at. She's just kind of, following around, giving him the eye, that kind of thing. And, that's when something's up. When someone keeps giving you the eye and they keep looking at you, and they keep wanting you to be close and wanting to be close and wanting to be close, then, it could, that's something Joseph saw and went, And it was clear, to Joseph of what she was pursuing, what she wanted. She wanted that, pleasure with him. She wanted that, something new, something exciting, and that's how some people look at intimacy, the sexual relations, is that everything is just about personal pleasure. But if really everything's about personal pleasure, then guess what? Everything's about personal pleasure. That means it's not just for your pleasure, but it's for other people's pleasure, meaning anybody could do whatever they wanted to do to have personal pleasure. And man, that would be quite a narcissistic world, wouldn't it? Yeah. Whenever something means anything, you have to guard it. You have to guard it. If your money is of any value to you, then you have to guard your money, right? You don't just, take your cash and put it on your front yard and just go about your day and let the wind blow it away. No, you guard it. You put it in a bank. You invest it. You're putting it in places where it can solidly build a return. Someplace where it's not just going to be blown in the air. And in our intimate relationships, we have to guard that. Because if we don't guard it, then everybody on the planet, the billions of people walking the planet right now, will do everything they want to do, anything they want to do that's pleasurable. And there will be a lot of hurt people. People will be hurt because people will just do what they want to do. Narcissism run wild. We see resistance. Man, resist. I love that. Do we win all the time? No. As human beings, we find that we're resisting, and then, we resist, right? But we get back up, we keep fighting, we keep doing it, we keep looking to Jesus, we keep going, right? Love that. But Joseph is a great example of, man, when you're in this, you're somewhere, you're in your business, you're in your high school, you're in your college, and you see someone coming at you like this, man, what a beautiful example of a guy who flees youthful lust. Man. And it says, one day, however, no one else was around, and he went in to do his work. See, he's in his business setting. And she came and grabbed him by the cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand, and he ran from the house. Man, to run so fast that even, man, your clothes get tore. I mean, that is desperation. Some people don't know this kind of situation because they've never been in these kind of situations where people are really blunt and really upfront about what they want. Growing up in SoCal, it was kind of common for people to be very blunt about kind of their desires and wishes and wants in an intimate way. And I just happen to find myself in some situations, where it's like this. Man, by God's grace, sometimes I'm I tremble at the situations that I found myself in, and how by some act of God's grace that I was unable to explain, but I didn't know God. I was able to be protected in a lot of ways. It could have been a lot worse. Let me just say that. And it says, when she saw she was holding his cloak and he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. Look, she said, my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran out and got away, and he left his cloak behind with me. So this is the sad part of, in our culture, we've had the Me Too movement, which is the movement of Me Too, meaning I too have been raped. That's been a big movement in our current culture. But then there's, was those reports, obviously, that came out that some of these things were false. And that's sad. It's kind of like Potiphar's wife, right? Calling rape, but when no one raped you. Man, that is just, oh, man, you just go, oh, because it hurts. It's not only affects the person who's lying, obviously, but it affects the person that you're lying about tremendously as well. Such a sensitive topic that when you lie about something, when it comes to this topic, it can really have some serious ripple effects and some ramifications in people's lives that just don't go away overnight. It takes some time. And here Potiphar's wife does it. And she kept the cloak in her hand until her husband came home, and she told her that story. That Hebrew slave you brought tried to come in and fool around with me, she said, but I screamed and I ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story, about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held. And there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. Now, wow, what a turn of events. Here you're in the political climate. And then could you imagine what the news was like in Egypt at this point? Can you hear the propaganda? Those Jews, right? Well, they weren't called Jews. They're called Hebrews. Those Hebrews are evil. Man, now, does this sound anything like our day? Those Hebrews, man, they're so evil. Look what they did. Look what they did. And, Joseph, that goes out over the air. Everybody gets in a pinch about it. Oh, man. Those Hebrews, you got to watch those Hebrews. They certainly got it. They come into your house and then they succeed and then they make money and then they succeed more and then they just take over everything and then they really want your wives too and, da-da-da-da-da. Do you see that our world today with the news networks that we have and the propaganda machines that go out every day, 24 hours a day, and all the slogans that are out there, that it's no different from back then. This is such a propaganda thing that's going on here that that Potiphar is able to put Joseph in prison, just being able to just put him in. I'm sure he, the news spread pretty wide that those Hebrews are bad. And Joseph gets put in with no resistance at all. Nothing he could do. And there's too much of a propaganda machine to fight against, right? And that's how it is today. If someone wants to call you out on something, it can ruin everything, right, in your life. And you have no control over it. People can make up whatever they want to make up. People in power will do what they do. But notice that when Joseph gets sold or gets put into the pokey, he still has all the gifts that he always has from God, these administrative gifts. And the warden picks up on this, that this guy was he's the guy who ran the machine in the government. This guy is the guy who ran Potiphar's whole world. This guy certainly has some skill, and those things certainly came out. And the warden saw Joseph and his abilities and said, you know what? I could use your help. And so Joseph gets elevated to the place of running a jail, running the Egyptian jail, and you just go, wow. It doesn't matter where we're at, whether we're in the political world, with the high and mighty, or when we're in the jail, right, working at the rehab. We want to do it under the Lord with the ability that God gives us, and we want to succeed in whatever strata of our social ladders that we are at. So if we're in this section, if we're a kid, we want to succeed there. If we're high school, we want to succeed there. College, whatever it is, we get into our business, we get into our world, we start working wherever we're working. We want to do the best we can. I remember when I moved out here, I got hired at Old Pueblo Traders, a big warehouse out here in Arizona. Sold clothes and shoes and stuff. I remember making $4.75 an hour. And I was so stoked they gave me health benefits because we were having a child. Now, this is back in 1994. And, even though I wasn't, I just living in I actually wasn't even living in an apartment at that time. I was I had a room, me and my wife had a room in her parents' home. And there I was working at Old Pueblo Traders. But, in my mind, I thought, God, you provided this. You provided this opportunity for me, my wife, and my future child. And Lord, I'm just so thankful, so grateful. I just want to share the love and joy of Christ in this place. And it's amazing how just over a short period of time, God blessed. And he just gave, I'm so thankful. He gave me a heart just to do the right things there and to learn how to do the right things in a business atmosphere, in a company, and just to serve with a good heart. And when difficulties happen, just to do everything I can to try to make things right. And man, it really, I could see God, blessing. And so very cool. Man, very cool. So very relatable, right? Chapter. I mean, isn't it amazing? Paula, I could see that it relates to your situations too, growing up, and the issues, right? And those difficulties, and we see all of this kind of stuff in these chapters that's really good for us. It's great to come to God and just be honest with God and share with God our the things that go on in our life, and knowing that he sees and he's able to elevate us, and he will, in Christ, he elevates us to the highest of highs. That's for sure, to glory. So, okay, you guys have a great day. Okay. Bye-bye.